The Joe Rogan Experience.
Well, that's a good thing. That's the more sensitive you are, though, the more you have to consider all the possibilities, and that's what could keep you up.
Right, or send you down the UFO wormhole. Right?
We talked about that right before the podcast. Yeah, there's this guy that's coming on. His name's Dr. Robert Schoch, and he's a geologist from Boston University. And he's worked on, there's some real scientists that believe it's entirely possible that the Sphinx and a lot of the construction in Egypt is far older than they think it is.
I know all about this.
Do you know all this?
I know all about the rain runoff and how much erosion has occurred around the base or around the pit and it absolutely couldn't have been done, depending on like the way the Sphinx is built, where it's located, the siting, where its level is far older. So
yes, it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 9,000 plus BC, because that's when back then the Nile Valley was a rainforest and somehow or another became a desert. And this guy's legit Boston University professor, geologist. He's traveling all over the place, but he's here for some UFO conference, and the UFO people wanted him to mention the UFO conference, and I'm like, fucking Christ with UFO conferences. You guys don't have anything. If you had something, it would be, what are you going to get together in a fucking Marriott somewhere and show some blurry picture of some fucking hubcap that someone chucked up into the air? Like, there's nothing. Everything that they look at falls apart under scrutiny. There's like a few videos. Okay, I'm going to back on
this.
Please do.
Let's just say, what about, do you know the Disclosure?
Yes, Disclosure Project. Yes.
Okay, there was their first press conference when they got all the, I tend to be impressed by the military, ranking members. I'm sort of like, if you were guarding missile silos and you say you saw something hover above it and deactivate, I'm probably going to check that out a little harder. And there were just so many people that stood up, in that press conference and said that they absolutely had seen evidence, met extraterrestrials, seen the crafts, like in hangars, etc.
Yep.
And to me, they didn't look like they had that much imagination. They're the kind of people that I didn't think could really. I mean, did you find that convincing at all?
No. Here's why.
No, they're just like a whole bunch of liars, a whole line of liars.
Steven, right? The Disclosure Project is Stephen
Greer's thing.
It's not
so much about him. Yeah. He doesn't appeal as much as the people that he brought on, who were mostly military guys.
The thing about military, anybody who's in the military is a person. If you get 100 people together, one of them's out of their fucking mind. If you get 1 million people, you've got a shit ton of people that are out of their fucking mind that are running around that want extra attention. One of the best ways to say one of the best ways to get extra attention is to say you've had some extraordinary experience that separates you from the pack. It's one of the main points of delusion that people that are really out of their fucking mind will want to point to. I see things in people. I can read auras. I can tell. I'm a psychic healer. I'm an intuitive person. They all have this thing that separates them from the herd without any work whatsoever. I feel like a lot of these people are that. They want attention. And so they tell these extraordinary stories. Now, when you said they're not creative, that's a very astute point, because they all have the same fucking story. Because it's the same story that's been going on forever. They just repeat shit they've already heard. Most of these people, I think, are full of shit. I think it is entirely possible that UFOs have been here. Entirely possible that people have seen UFOs. Entirely possible. But a lot of those people, my fucking bullshit radar just goes off. Bang, 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 bang,
really?
bang, bang, bang. Yeah. I've talked to too many of them. When I did that television show, Joe Rogan Questions Everything, and I met with UFO people and Bigfoot people, I was telling you before the podcast, it cured me. Because I got to be around those people for hours and just talk to them with no cameras on. I'm like, oh, you're fucking crazy, or you're delusional, or your way of looking at things is not objective, or you're talking to me because you want to convince me of something. You're not just communicating the ideas that are actually in your head. You're pitching me some sort of a speech. You're like, you've got some sort of a performance you're doing for me.
Oh,
and I smell it. And as a performer, I smell it. I'm like, this is nonsense. You're telling me nonsense. They would tell, well, you want evidence? I'll back a truck up and show you the evidence. I'm like, where's your fucking evidence? You don't have any evidence.
You should have brought it today. I mean, exactly. Here's the thing. Did they seem off kilter in everything else they talked about?
Yes.
Okay, so they
everything.
did. That
Relationships, jobs, they're all screwballs. They're almost all screwballs. The people that are most convincing are the people that see these orbs flying around.
The pilots.
Yeah. Well, the reason why they see these things is there's a real phenomenon called ball lightning. It's absolutely real. and it's caused by various weather conditions, and they think that it can even be caused sometimes by the right weather conditions and the shifting of tectonic plates, that somehow or another the friction. Yes, and that these ball lightning, if you've ever seen videos of it, it's phenomenal. It just flies around. They've even had it inside airplanes. Somehow or another, ball lightning has shot down the aisle of an airplane while it was in flight.
I've actually seen it.
Have you really?
I've actually
Where have
seen
you
ball
seen it?
lightning on a flight that was struck by lightning.
Whoa.
It was pink. And it sounded like a giant BB gun hit a tin can. Oh, yeah.
Whoa, you were in a plane that was hit by lightning? Holy shit. That's intense.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
What do you think of all this Pentagon UFO, we've recovered crafts, not of this world talk?
Okay, yeah, I think two things, I think, again, can always be true at the same time. I don't think we're the only intelligent life out there. I mean, I'm classifying us as intelligent. But I also don't think we're hiding some alien spacecraft somewhere.
So why do you think the Pentagon would come out and say something like that?
Well, I think, look, we did here comes a pitch for my show. For Black Files Declassified. That's Black Files Declassified.
Black Declassified? And how could one watch this show?
God, that was a good first season, wasn't it? It was on Discovery, on Science Channel.
Ah, I love Discovery. I love the Science Channel.
We did an episode on Advanced Aeronautic Threat and Identification Program, ATIP, which was the Pentagon's admitted, came out and said, yes, we have a program, that we ran a program. It's no longer in existence, called ATIP, which was designed to identify unidentified aviation threats, basically. So it's not talking about UFOs necessarily. It could be a hostile, prototype aircraft that, what is that?
I talked to Commander Fravor.
David Fravor.
Yeah, David was in here, and he explained his incident off of the coast of San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
And he said they tracked this thing. It dropped from 60,000 feet to 1 foot above the sea in a second.
Yeah. And it wasn't just him seeing, right?
No.
It was the radar operators on
Exactly.
board and his wingmen.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, but I think...
they said it was tracking them, and then it actually actively blocked their tracking.
And then no visible means of propulsion.
Exactly. No heat signal.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's... Look, and he's a very credible
He's as credible
witness.
as it gets.
Yeah, right. And so...
He's not the only one.
Yeah, not everything... I mean, but...
What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think we don't... Here's what I think. I think we haven't resolved that issue. We don't know. There was no final report that gave some sort of conclusive evidence that said this is what this this object was. It is considered still to this day to be an anomaly, perhaps they just no clarification, which is interesting in all by itself. And again, kind of goes back to this. Look, are we the only intelligent people? No. But do I think that the government is capable all these years of holding a secret like that? No, I really don't. I think there's much like with MK Ultra or anything else like it, eventually shit hits the fan, stuff comes out. And I don't think I'm not one of those, and I say this, and I'm sure a lot of people disagree, but I just don't think that the government's capable of keeping secrets for the long term, certainly not of this magnitude. But I think there are certainly things that have happened that we can't explain. And one of them would be the sighting by Fravor.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but materials that aren't, from Earth. Look, shit hits the Earth from space all the time, and that qualifies as a material that is not found.
That's not what they said, though.
Well,
they said they've recovered crafts not from this world.
Yeah, I would want to sit down with the individual saying that and say, okay, clarify this, please.
I'd want to take them to one of them brothels.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. I sit there with a martini behind that mirror. It's like, okay.
Hey, man,
yeah.
you really saw.
There you go. Bring one of those hookers in from the 60s. But no,
don't do that to her or him.
No.
I would want to know, though, what what is actually happening, and why would they come out with a statement like that?
Well, I'm going to tell you this between you and me is second season of Black Files Declassified. We're going to be looking at that.
Why do you think?
I don't know what that's the big question is why would they say that?
Right.
And I don't have an answer for that. I don't know, and that's why I say
it's a shocker.
It definitely bears further investigation. That goes without saying.
If there was something that was coming, they would want to prepare people. And I think if you wanted to prepare people, the best way to prepare people is to slowly give them signs that some shit is about to go down. And one of the best ways is to say, we have found things that are not of this world. Mm-hmm. Okay, think about that for a little while. We'll see you in a few months. a few months of accepting that without any. See, there's no event, right? It's just a statement.
What was the exact wording? Can we bring that up? Yeah, the exact wording of.
Here it is. Crashes. Harry Reid said he believed crashes of vehicles from other worlds had occurred, and that retrieved materials had been studied secretly for decades.
Yeah.
Now, Bob Lazar. Do you know the story of Bob Lazar? Bob Lazar here, and he said some things that were ridiculed but turned out to be absolutely true. One of the things that he said was that there was this element 115, and that they had figured out a way to stabilize this element in these other planets, and that's what they used to propel these vehicles with a different kind of propulsion that manipulated gravity, and it essentially had created some sort of a warp where they weren't subject to the same laws of physics with this propulsion system that we are with what we have, which is just igniting fuel and pushing the explosion pushes the rocket into space.
Which could explain sort of the Fravor sighting.
Yeah, and the way he described these vehicles in the 1980s and the early 1990s is exactly the way Fravor's vehicle worked, exactly the way the gimbal video worked. These things, for whatever reason, they fly one way and then they turn sideways, like if you had a plate, the plate turns up and down, and then that's the way it travels. And then somehow or another, that's how it travels insanely fast, that it does something to manipulate gravity around it.
Yeah.
It sounds super weird. But the fact that they talked about this in the early 90s, and then this is the exact video that the Pentagon refers to, that you actually see these objects that they can't explain, that don't give off a heat signal, that move in this exact same way at spectacular rates of speed. And then that's how the TikTok craft worked too.
Right. Well, I mean, there's a leap there necessarily that you got to make.
I don't want to make that leap either. I know what you're saying. For years, it's all horseshit.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not. Again, not saying I'm just saying there's certain parts of this, like okay, Harry Reid talking about it. Well, look, Harry Reid was he was very interested in this stuff. He allocated some federal funds to one of his buddies in Nevada to create a sort of a center, for examining this and for developing space exploration capabilities. So Harry Reid is certainly interested in this. I talked to Lou Elizondo, who ran ATIP, right? And you don't really get that answer when you say, okay, Lou, was ATIP holding on to materials, that came from a alien craft? No. What they're saying is
maybe it was ATIP that was involved in that.
Maybe it wasn't ATIP. Yeah. No, that's that. Okay, I get that. And again, I guess what I'm saying is I'm open to say, yeah, fine. Look, anything's possible. I suppose in this world, things that I do know is I have a really hard time believing the government could keep this all buttoned up over a period of time.
Isn't there a genuine ridicule factor for coming forward that would help? I mean, that's a part of the whole things about all the UFO stories. They're so ridiculous.
Well, that's why they set up ATIP to begin with, right? Was so that they could have sort of a legitimate outlet and a place for this to go. But yeah, Fravor himself talks about it. Look, it's not in their best interest to get back on the carrier and say, by the way, we spotted an unidentified flying object.
Yeah.
But they did, and Yeah, and you're right. So that's the natural tendency is to kind of look the other way or roll your eyes, and that can act as a deterrent. Yeah, I don't know. But I do think that it bears further investigation. There's no doubt about that. And I think that the ATIP program that the Pentagon was running, for the minimal cost of that compared to the cost of another air asset or, platform of some sort, I think they should have kept it going, right? And they should have normalized to some degree because it's in our national security interest to know. Have the Russians or have others developed materials, right, or propulsions? Everybody's working on new propulsion systems, right? Everybody that has the ability and the resources. So hypersonic craft, that's just coming, right? That's going to happen. And whoever wins that particular race is going to be further up the food chain than everybody else. So it's in our national interest to be exploring any legitimate or potentially legitimate sighting to understand what that is. That doesn't mean you're chasing UFOs or sort of spacecraft from it just means you should know what the hell that is or what's out there. So I'm a big proponent of that. I'm just saying also you have to proceed with caution.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
I get occasionally called by somebody from inside. And what I think they're doing, first of all, one, we may be faking a UFO situation for reasons that I don't understand.
If we're making a UFO situation, do you think that there's technology that's available to people in the United States that is beyond our current understanding of what's possible?
90% no.
90 no.
Because
Wow.
it's very hard. It's very hard to imagine physicists continuing to work on nothing for their entire careers. The number of people who are going to be retiring shortly, having never actually done physics as a physicist. We're talking about wasted lives. People are going to be very weird when they realize that they blew their entire career. And I believe I can say what many of these problems are. And if you want to humiliate me at a leading university, just ask me to talk. You can put it on video. You don't realize how many things the standard model has subtly wrong when we explain it to people. It's not that the Lagrangian is wrong, not that the rules are wrong, but we say wrong stuff. We say, like, there are 3 generations that are only of matter that are only distinguished by mass. In other words, there's 3 copies of this stuff here. This is like the wood version, and then there's the plastic version, and then there's the metal version. There aren't 3. There are 2 generations plus an extra imposter generation, which looks like a generation. I mean, I can get into these things. And that should be a provocation. Somebody says, let's call this guy up, have him out, and figure out what he's talking about. Doesn't matter. I don't think we're doing physics.
What are you doing?
I think we are playing paintball rather than going to war, and we're giving prizes for generals who command the best paintball army. And then we're referencing everyone else who's actually trying to figure out how to fight to, well, have you submitted to the paintball competition? It's like, no, I don't want to do paintball. I understand that it keeps your skills up. I understand that some of them are transferable. But I mean, like, you've been in street fights?
Not since I was...
Yeah, well, I understand. Like, I haven't been for a long time. It's different than what you guys do in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. There's lots of stuff you're not allowed to do.
Yeah.
Right. You get in a street fight, it's a completely different thing.
Sure.
What we're doing is not physics in the same sense.
So what they're doing is
we're doing safe stuff.
exercising.
Yeah, exactly.
They're exercising.
And the exercises are keeping people limber. They're keeping people in a fighting mentality. It's not that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has nothing to do with fighting. We've seen people use it in the street for sure, right? But small joint manipulation is part of street fighting. Eye gouging is part of street fighting. Pulling a knife is part of street fighting. These things are not part of any reputable gym that you might go to. So I want to do the thing that isn't paintball. And I didn't want to do it up until recently because the danger of unleashing a neutron on the world is so high. Now I realize I'm done with that. You guys are willing to play footsies with Putin? You're not going to survive. You're not the responsible adults I thought you were. Like, if I unleash a neutron and it leads to some sort of proliferation of deadly technology, it's on you. It's not on me. You're already taking risks that you shouldn't be taking.
So if you think 90% sure that this is not coming from here, you believe this because you don't think that the proper science in order to achieve these kind of results is being done by the people that you believe are capable of doing it?
That's correct. I know that, for example, when I talk to Nima, or when I talk to Juan Maldacena, or when I've talked to Natty Seiberg, these people are absolutely brilliant, and they don't know the answer unless they're the greatest actors I've ever seen.
So those brilliant physicists are looking at these supposed videos. What is the best, most compelling?
Sorry, UFO stuff.
What are you talking about then?
They're not talking about things that can extend Einstein.
Right.
Therefore, to get back to your technology question,
Right.
might have engineering applications, because it's the engineering applications that are terrifying.
Right.
Right. The discovery of the neutron was one thing. The Teller-Ulam design was its weaponization. So suddenly, you can do the Tsar bomb or Castle Bravo, these unbelievable explosions, which, like, the difference between there were Civil War veterans who saw action in the Civil War who lived to see Ivy Mike in the Pacific. So the Civil War was almost a thermonuclear war in terms of human scale. It's less than 100 years different. People have forgotten how terrifying, important, wonderful, jaw-dropping, and awesome physics is, because it hasn't done anything that completely screws your mind.
Like Hiroshima or Nagasaki.
Or Castle Bravo.
With Castle Bravo.
That was the test in the Pacific where we thought it was going to be like controlled and like, or what is it, Starfish, where we did an atmospheric explosion over Hawaii, and then the Russians like, hold my beer, Nova Zemlya.
Yeah.
We remember, I'm the guy 5 years ago who was saying we need above ground nuclear tests because all you people have lost your fear. Like, yes, Eric is crazy, but he's correct.
What's this one? That's Castle Bravo. Oh my God.
Right. Like,
so they detonated in that facility and they expected it to be far smaller than it was?
they detonated in the Pacific.
Right. But it's right next to that facility that was in the video.
Yeah.
Was that the facility that was initially filmed? Like,
Yeah.
what is this facility?
That's it. It was Inawak, I forget, Atoll. So, like,
It's crazy how long ago that was and how close it was to the Civil War if you really put it in that context.
Well, this is what I'm trying to say is what I'm trying to tell you.
Look at that. That's so insane.
Have you done this in Oculus?
No, I have not.
I highly recommend, if they're
I
not going to do a nuke above ground so that we can save ourselves by fear.
Oh, look at that.
Right, this is religious stuff, Joe.
Yeah, it is religious
Like,
stuff.
we have announced, if somebody is listening to these tests that we did, my belief is very shortly before you get the ability to traverse the cosmos, if that is possible, you let off a nuke. Right? It's like, you've had kids. There's some stuff that happens right before they figure out how to break out of the crib.
That's part UFO folklore,
I know.
too. Fat Man and Little Boy. That's a big part of UFO. That once they dropped those, that's when all the UFOs started appearing.
So the question is, the analogy I give, so I talked to Avi about the following thing. I am a fan of something I call the doubly scientific method. The usual scientific method makes a hidden assumption that it never voices, which is if we're going to study orcas, we assume that we are smarter than orcas. Or if we're going to study cephalopods, right, like an octopus, we think we're smarter. And what do? We disguise ourselves. We create artificial environments. We do all sorts of crazy things based on the fact that we're smarter than what we study, from everything from rocks to orcas. The doubly scientific method says, okay, assume that you're studying a rat in a maze, but you yourself are the rat in somebody else's maze. Now you have to look up the intelligence scale, not just down. And in the doubly scientific method, you have to assume that whatever is studying you is hiding from you the way you are hiding from your subjects. So if you see somebody in a duck blind, for example, and he's studying ducks, you understand that somebody may be hiding from you. And they might be able to use multiple dimensions of time. They might be able to cloak themselves and disguise themselves. Or for example, if you take microscopic UFOs, this cup has a radius of r and a circumference of 2 pi r. The disk that it spans is pi r squared in area. But if you look at this cup, it's much larger than pi r squared because we pushed it out. You could have a sphere where if you could cheaply engineer space-time, not through the Einstein field equations, but through the successor theory that recovers Einstein, you could have an entire stadium inside of a tennis ball. Just the way this cup doesn't blow your mind until you realize that its area is much greater than pi r squared. Why look for a giant floating thing in the sky? If you could bend space and time and you could play with the rulers the way I'm saying, I would put this in a tiny little profile.
Whoa. So we're only looking at, in terms of our understanding of the distance between objects, planets, gravity. We're looking at that. All that stuff where if it didn't exist, if somehow or another we lived in some contained environment and we had no concept of space whatsoever, and then we gained access to it, we would be unbelievably overwhelmed. If you lived in some sort of underground facility your entire life,
Love this.
and then one day you got a chance to go outside and see the Keck Observatory in Hawaii in a clear night with no moon, you would be overwhelmed. You wouldn't be able to believe that the world was as big as it really was, or that the universe was as big as it was.
Yeah, impedance mismatch. If you watch meteor showers the way my family does, it's religious. It's transformational. It's transcendent. Yeah. The problem, as you know, from the default mode network, right, is that mostly what your brain is doing is not communicating information, but screening. Right, your eyes, your fovea is precious because that's the thing that can resolve at very high levels.
Yeah.
But like, I can barely see Jamie out of the corner of my eye because my peripheral vision can't be at the same level as my fovea. I'd be overwhelmed.
Right.
So we're talking about tapping in to a picture of the world that we are not. Our brain is not prepared for the idea that time is multidimensional. That was the whole point of giving Lex another watch. We don't have a way to think about, I'll meet you at 5:15 and 12:30, according to two different scales of time. Or, for example, time and space, if I'm correct, the 14-dimensional manifold that has all the quantum going on it is split probably 7 and 7 dimensions because we have 6 extra time dimensions and 4 extra space. Add 6 to 1 and 3 to 4 and you get 7. So space and time are interchangeable. There's a duality between them. All of this stuff is like, okay, it's how you hit on chicks in a bar. Hey, let me tell you something about space and time you never thought about.
Oh, my God.
But, what? Worked for me.
Do you think, now when you were talking about these people that keep mananaing you and not giving you access to whatever they're talking about, do you think they're talking about some sort of an engineering solution to this type of technology?
I haven't met in striking distance in 3 years.
So how do you have something that you don't, that's going to change your way of looking? Is it possible that you've missed something?
Must be wrong. First of all, like this is my life's work.
What's
right?
the way they raise it to you? About it changing the way you see the world.
Eric, I'll complain about data and that's not the data we have. What we've been showing the public is downsampled, meaning it's fuzzier, it's low resolution. It's like, how clear is it? As clear as you want. How clear are you that there's something to see? You can see it with your own eyes. There's no question.
Dude, if I was to shut the fuck up and let them show me, I'd be like, let's go.
I'm not any NDA.
I'm saying,
But you want to.
I want to know.
You want to know in a different. Look, my life's work is a theory. It's one theory. My entire life is really about one theory. Okay? Like I do this entertainment thing and I talk to people and all this stuff. Bullshit. Really what I am is an academic who realized that you can't do academics inside of the university system and watch it disintegrate into madness as we speak. I figured this out a long time ago. I want to know whether this is right or wrong so much better, so much more than I want to know whether UFOs exist. UFOs, to me, are an indication of whether I'm right or wrong. You see, it's data. It's an input to me.
Mm-hmm.
Because
so if you're right, that means
if future, it means we can leave not the planet but the solar system. We can explore. The cosmos are traversable. If we can leave, anything else can visit. If you look at the entirety of the universe and you imagine that ultimately there are societies that destroy themselves because they get atomic weapons before they figure out how to leave. Some societies are smarter than that. And they'll be able to leave and colonize the cosmos. And for them not to be here would be madness.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
There was no, to my knowledge, there hasn't been any correlation of that. And the creatures that are described in Socorro, in New Mexico, and in Valençol in France, so those are three cases that I've been very involved in from the beginning, from day one, involve creatures that are about 3 feet tall, that breathe our air, recognize our signals, communicate with us in funny ways, even mentally. I mean, the witnesses describe getting images in their minds and so on, in all three cases. And what's interesting is, people can argue about Trinity all they want, like they argue about Roswell, but the case in Socorro and the case in France, in Valençol, were investigated by governments, not by the local UFO group, although the local UFO group did a good job in all those cases. But they were, in Socorro, it was first the local police. The local policemen saw the craft and the beings and described what happened. He was terrified, but, when the thing took off, he thought it was something to do with some new gadget or some work in the desert. It's an area that's still in the same state today. I've gone back there with Dr. Hynek's son, with Paul Hynek a few months ago. I've gone several times there. And so after the police, turned out the FBI was in town on another case. They had no jurisdiction in New Mexico for that particular case. It wasn't a federal case, but they helped preserve the traces, the FBI way. And the local police was happy to have them there. And then there was the state police came in and did an investigation. And then people from the base, came in with experts in explosives, experts in recovery of weapons and rockets and so on, because they thought it might be something that had come from the Trinity range that was out of its way and had crashed near Socorro, in which case they might have responsibility, including financial responsibility if something was destroyed or whatever. So this was very serious. I have the whole file. Okay, it's a big file.
Right.
Nobody's looking at it. I mean, the investigation in Washington now, they are saying, we're going to look at the cases of the last 12 months. Well, what kind of science is that? Can you imagine scientists reading this? And this is the way they are going to solve the UFO problem, by looking at vague pictures of lights in the sky for 1 year? Why don't they go back to those records? Those are federal records. Okay, the case in Valençol, 5 agencies of the French government. So this guy was a farmer. He had a field where he was growing plants to make perfume. So this was high level, expensive crop. This wasn't just, alfalfa or something. And he goes there at 5 o'clock in the morning because, he wants to do to water the thing and so on before the sun is is up because it's going to be south of France. It's going to be very hot. You can't work in the field during the early afternoon. So he wants to be done with that. He sees this contraption, in the middle of the field, crushing the plants. And so he sneaks in, and he's paralyzed. Okay. Now there is an egg-shaped object, just like the one, at Trinity, just like the one in Socorro. It's the size of a mid-sized truck. There are two creatures in front of it, human looking, 2 eyes, breathing air. They look at him sort of amused, and one of them has something on his belt. He takes out, pointed at him, and that's when he's paralyzed. Now, he's not, as you know, I'm not a doctor, but I've gone to doctors about what kind of paralysis is that, where you can stand up and watch something, you just can't move. They said, well, there is a type of paralysis that will just inhibit the motor, motor nerves, where but you'll still be up and aware. You're not going to fall down, in a heap. And from there, he sees them going back inside the thing. The thing takes off. It takes off like a shot out of a gun, and it vanishes in midair. Okay. Now, he goes to see the gendarmes. This man is fairly wealthy. He owns quite a bit of, several fields, expensive crops. His wife is the mayor of the town. The gendarmes are going to be very careful with him because he's also from the resistance in World War II. When he was young, he joined the resistance, and the resistance in that part of France fought in the Alps against the Germans, and they were regarded as heroes of World War II. And so the gendarmes are very careful with him. There are some things he's not going to tell the gendarmes because he thinks, and I went there, he didn't want to talk to anybody from Paris. He didn't want to be on TV. He wanted to concentrate on his experience because he thought there was going to be something else. And he was aware of some of his buddies. Now, this is a part of France where people talk, but they have secrets too. I mean, historically, there are things like that in the U.S., parts where people are not going to talk to strangers.
Right.
The only reason I could go there was that I went there with a lady who was from Paris, with the government. She was with de Gaulle's government. She had the rank of ambassador, and she had a vacation home there. So we went there for 3 days, and she knew everybody there. And he told us what he thought might happen again. And he didn't want the gendarmes mixed in with what he was doing.
Why did he think that something was going to happen again?
They evidently, and he swore us to secrecy about what it was, but evidently there was communication with the beings when he was there. Now,
so these beings just tiny, look like people. Did they have different features than us?
Just like the ones at Trinity and like the ones at Socorro. So in that book you have actually 2, 2, and 3. You have 7 creatures that are humanoid, that breathe our air, that seem to understand us. The visual, there is visual contact. Well, we can have visual contact with animals. I mean, that doesn't mean they are human or meta-human, but there is messages that come through all of that, that the witnesses are reluctant to talk about in all 3 cases. So in Socorro, finally, the Air Force went there. They threw the Air Force out because the Air Force said, well, that's just a gadget, and from the from the base, and that was stupid. So they finally sent Dr. Hynek there, and Dr. Hynek asked me to organize the files that were coming. I was at Northwestern at the time, working. I had done my PhD already, and I was on the staff of the computing center, and we had a small team trying to help, free, trying to help Hynek keep the files together. So we were, in communication with him the whole time, and then I put the files together, and I have the file. This is the official file.
So people were reluctant to talk about what these creatures were communicating with them. But did they talk about it at all?
It was very personal.
Very personal.
Yeah. There had been a communication that transcended their life. There was something else, something outside. So you could almost call it a sort of a religious feeling, but it wasn't. It wasn't about divinity or God specifically, but it was about the other side of life, a bigger meaning for life. But that's their interpretation. It may not be. There may be other things that they are trying to communicate.
But it was found for them.
Yes.
And all cases had similar stories in that regard.
And in all three cases, there are traces that were measured. There were, there is technology of sort. And in the case of Socorro, people came up with all kinds of ideas that maybe it was a balloon. A special balloon. Right? There were only 12 of them in the world and so on. Well, in the book, people haven't noticed it, but in the book, I was able to solve that problem because I found a transcript of a conversation with a man who was head of a motor pool at the on the Army range at White Sands. And he had given his team some instructions on, how to make sure that the motor pool was working really well, because White Sands is so big. When people went home, they could get lost, at White Sands. And then how are you going to find them? I mean, there are tracks, but there is no paved road at the time. How are you going to, find them? So you can launch a helicopter the next day looking for, a lost car somewhere with a family in it. But so he made rules that they had to call periodically to report where they were when they went home, 50 miles away across the desert. So they could find them if there was something wrong with the car. He's driving home with his family. This is after the Socorro thing is done. They are all interrogating Lonnie Zamora, the cop who was driving that thing. And he sees a light over the mountains in the southwest towards Mexico. But it's still, it's still in New Mexico, but it's in that direction. A light that's not a star, it's really bright. And the light gets brighter and brighter, and his car dies. Now, he's head of a motor pool, for the base. Everybody reports to him, and they have all the army cars and the trucks and everything else, the half-tracks. So he looks at that thing. He tries to call his team. The radio doesn't work. The radio should work. The radio doesn't work. And the thing gets very bright, and then it recedes. It goes away the way it apparently came in. We don't know if it came in or if it just got bright. Okay, the car starts. He goes home, and then the next day he goes to his shop. He gets his staff together. He says, "You guys are going to take this car apart. I want to see every screw and every piece of it and every level and everything and the seats and so on. I want to see all of that on the floor. And you're going to test it, and you're going to tell me what's changed, or if anything, how that car stopped in the middle of the desert." And they couldn't find anything. And that report was an official report, okay, that was never published. And it nails the whole thing, that this was not a balloon. This was not an hallucination. The patrolman wasn't drunk like they accused him of, or making up a story and so on.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Well, that's a good thing. That's like, the more sensitive you are, though, the more you have to consider all the possibilities, and that's what could keep you up.
Right,
It does
or
sleep
send
like
you
a
down
brick.
the UFO wormhole. Right.
We talked about that right before the podcast. Yeah, there's this guy that's coming on. His name's Dr. Robert Schock, and he's a geologist from Boston University. And he's worked on, there's some real scientists that believe it's entirely possible that the Sphinx and a lot of the construction in Egypt is far older than they think it is.
I know all about this.
Do you know all this?
I know
Okay.
all
Do
about
you know
the
Robert
rain
Schock?
runoff and how
Yes,
much
yes.
erosion has occurred around the
Yes.
base or around the pit
Mm-hmm.
and it absolutely couldn't have been done, depending on like the way the Sphinx is built, where it's located, the siting,
Yeah.
where its level is far older. So
Yes, it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 9,000 plus BC, because that's when back then the Nile Valley was a rainforest, and somehow or another became a desert. And this guy's legit Boston University professor, geologist. And he's traveling all over the place, but he's here for some UFO conference, and the UFO people wanted him to mention the UFO conference, and I'm like, fucking Christ with UFO conferences. You guys don't have anything. If you had something, it would be, what are you going to get together in a fucking Marriott somewhere and show some blurry picture of some fucking hubcap that someone chucked up into the air? Like, there's nothing. Everything that they look at falls apart under scrutiny. There's like a few videos.
Okay, I'm going to back on
Please
this.
Please do.
Let's just say, what about, do you know the Disclosure?
Yes, Disclosure Project. Yes.
Okay, there was their first press conference when they got all the, I tend to be impressed by the military, ranking members. I'm sort of like, if you were guarding missile silos and you say you saw something hover above it and deactivate, I'm probably going to check that out a little harder. And there were just so many people that stood up, in that press conference and said that they absolutely had seen evidence, met extraterrestrials, seen the crafts, like in hangars, etc.
Yep.
And to me, they didn't look like they had that much imagination. They're the kind of people that I didn't think could really. I mean, did you find that convincing at all?
No. Here's why.
No,
Because
they're
the
just
guy
like a
who did
whole bunch of liars, a whole line
That's
of liars.
Stephen, right? The Disclosure Project
It's
is
not so
Stephen
much
Greer's
about
thing.
him.
Yeah.
He doesn't appeal as much as the people that he brought on, who were mostly military guys.
The thing about military, anybody who's in the military is a person. If you get 100 people together, one of them's out of their fucking mind. If you get 1 million people, you've got a shit ton of people that are out of their fucking mind that are running around that want extra attention. One of the best ways to say one of the best ways to get extra attention is to say you've had some extraordinary experience that separates you from the pack. It's one of the main points of delusion that people that are really out of their fucking mind will want to point to. I see things in people. I can read auras. I can tell. I'm a psychic healer. I'm an intuitive person. They all have this thing that separates them from the herd without any work whatsoever. I feel like a lot of these people are that. They want attention. And so they tell these extraordinary stories. Now, when you said they're not creative, that's a very astute point, because they all have the same fucking story. Because it's the same story that's been going on forever. They just repeat shit they've already heard. Most of these people, I think, are full of shit. I think it is entirely possible that UFOs have been here. Entirely possible that people have seen UFOs. Entirely possible. But a lot of those people, my fucking bullshit radar just goes off. Bang, 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 bang,
Really?
bang, bang, bang. Yeah. I've talked to too many of them. When I did that television show, Joe Rogan Questions Everything, and I met with UFO people and Bigfoot people, I was telling you before the podcast, it cured me. Because I got to be around those people for hours and just talk to them with no cameras on. I'm like, oh, you're fucking crazy, or you're delusional, or your way of looking at things is not objective, or you're talking to me because you want to convince me of something. You're not just communicating the ideas that are actually in your head. You're pitching me some sort of a speech. You're like, you've got some sort of a performance you're doing for me.
Oh,
and I smell
okay.
it. And as a performer, I smell it. I'm like, this is nonsense. You're telling me nonsense. You know, they would tell, well, you want evidence? I'll back a truck up and show you the evidence. I'm like, where's your fucking evidence? You don't
You
have any
should have
evidence.
brought it today. I mean, like,
Yeah,
well, here's the
exactly.
thing. Did they seem off kilter in everything else they talked about?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
so they
everything.
did. That would be convincing.
Relationships, jobs, they're all screwballs. They're almost all screwballs. The people that are most convincing are the people that see these orbs flying around.
The pilots.
Yeah, well, the reason why they see these things is there's a real phenomenon called ball lightning. It's absolutely real, and it's caused by various weather conditions, and they think that it can even be caused sometimes by the right weather conditions and the shifting of tectonic plates, that somehow or another the
Yes.
friction. Yes, and that these ball lightning, if you've ever seen videos of it, it's phenomenal. It just flies around. They've even had it inside airplanes. Somehow or another, ball lightning has shot down the aisle of an airplane while it was in flight.
I've actually seen it.
Have you really?
I've actually
Where have
seen
you
ball
seen it?
lightning on a flight that was struck by lightning. Whoa. It was pink. And it sounded like a giant BB gun hit a tin can. Oh, yeah.
Oh, you were in a plane that was hit by lightning? Holy shit. That's intense.
When I saw Gleason, Gleason was what I wanted to be. I just thought Jackie Gleason was just amazing, you know, and I said, I want to be like that guy, you know, because he was incredible. And it was, people didn't realize he was a stand-up, you know.
I didn't know Gleason did stand up.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
What? 2-ton Tony Galenta was giving him shit. And
The boxer.
and Gleason heckled him, and Tony knocked him out.
Oh,
Oh,
Jesus.
yeah. Oh, yeah. He was incredible, you know, because I met Art Carney.
You know, Jackie was obsessed with UFOs. Did you know that?
Nah, but I kind of dig it too, man.
There's a story. This guy told it to me. Some guy was a rock band dude. He told me the story, and I don't know if it's true. But the story was that Gleason was friends with Nixon, and
Right.
Nixon said, "You want to see some shit?" And
Yeah.
Nixon took him to
Area 51.
I don't think it was Area 51. I think it was Hangar 18, which is at Wright-Patterson
another
Air
one.
Force Base, and I think it was outside of Columbus, Ohio. And they supposedly had some fucking crashed UFO there. And Gleason built a replica of it, or had a replica of it built in his fucking backyard in New York.
Wow.
They went to the Homestead Air Force Base outside of Miami, it says.
Oh, okay.
wow.
There
Yeah,
you go.
yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah.
I got a bullshit version of it. Pull up the actual version. Where are you getting this from?
I just Googled it. I mean, it's a rumored story, so I don't know if it's...
Yeah, that's how I got
Well-
it. I got it from a guy in a band. It might be bullshit, but he gave me some book on UFOs. And he was telling me about this, but that Jackie Gleason apparently was obsessed with UFOs.
Well, I believe there's got to be something out there.
Yeah.
You know, I don't. We're it. I mean, that's it.
No, I
right?
don't
So
believe we're it.
I did a lot of USO shows, and I've been around the world, and I was every time I've done. I was in off the coast of Turkey someplace, and the commander of the base took me out for dinner afterwards, and I got him drunk. I got him pretty drunk. I was sober at the time. I got him pretty drunk, and I said, "Hey, man," he goes, "Let me ask you about Area 51." He goes, he got stone sober. He goes, "This conversation never happened," and he left, and I had to take a cab to find my way back to a nuke base that no one knows about.
Jesus.
Right. So then I'm at the dunes. This is how long ago that was, and I'm with these guys who are in the Air Force, and they said, "Man, we really like your show. We're fans of yours." But I got them drunk. And I said, "Hey, man, what about Area 51?" And they said, "Mr. Clark, good night." And they walked away. So now, me and Mike are golfing with these Blue Angels, and he goes, "You're going to ask them?" I go, "No." The second year, we golf with them again. I go, "All right, fellas, tell me about Area 51. I go, well, he goes, I was flying a plane and I had malfunction and I had to land there. And they came out and they pretty much blindfolded me, took me into a building, and they fixed my jet within 35 minutes and then put me back in the place. You were never here. And I went, oh, my God. So I don't know what's out there.
Yeah, but here's the thing. That was an area where they were testing all sorts of military equipment. They were testing different new, like that's where the B-2 or the stealth bomber,
right?
They were testing that there,
and the spy plane.
Yeah, they were testing shit.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of secret stuff there.
Right.
Didn't necessarily have to be aliens.
I understand that, and I'm hoping that there is.
But he's still trying to.
But I'd love to go there, man. Oh man, but you can't even drive. If you drive up there, Joe, by the time you get your camera out, they're on you.
Yeah.
And tell you, well, get out of here. We'll lock you up. You know, it's not good. So.
They don't even anymore. They've moved to a new area. They've actually, because it's so heavily scrutinized and because of Google Earth and all sorts of different ways you can see things, they've actually moved to another area.
Well, I read everything I can find about that too, and I think I read the book Area 51. It was 2 years ago, and basically at the end of the book, it was like Hitler had these, his guys experimenting with the Jews and put their arms on different ways, and had an aircraft that looked like a spaceship, and it crashed. And these people came out with crazy arms. Well, they're aliens, and that was in the book, So that kind of shut the shit out of that.
I know that Hitler did experiment with some sort of disc type air vehicle. They did, but I don't know if they ever got it off the ground or what the deal was. But the most interesting story is the story of Bob Lazar, who was a guy who worked at Area 51, and he got fired because his wife was cheating on him. And they were recording all of his phone calls and taping all of his conversations, and they found out that his wife was cheating on him. They thought that he was going to be emotionally unstable. And so they didn't tell him why. They just released him. And so then he brings friends to watch these, what he said were alien crafts that they were experimenting with, and they were flying these things around that had some super advanced propulsion system that they were asking him to help back engineer, and he brought friends to do that, and then they got arrested for doing that. And when he did that, then he started talking about it. So he's been discredited by a bunch of people, but I don't know who's telling the truth. He says that they wiped his college record so that no one, but people said they went to school with him, and he definitely did work for the government, but under what capacity, who knows. But his story's fascinating, and I want it to be true. You hear it, you want it to be true.
Joe, they used to fly the team of people that worked at Area 51 from Burbank.
Yeah.
Every day, fly them in, they'd work, and then fly them back. It's like they didn't stay over.
There was that airport outside of Vegas. It was right outside where the Riviera was.
Yeah.
You could actually look out and see the airport. And they would fly the people from there in these unmarked jets.
Yeah, want it to be true.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
With Grush, I think, here's my take on it. I think he believes what he's saying, right? I think he has gone out there. I think I'm legit. Look, he was a 14-year veteran of military and the National Reconnaissance Office, and I think he went out and he talked to enough people, and he believes it. I don't think he's out there like spinning a yarn and is worried that now he's gotten over his skis and he's said too many things, and now I don't know. I don't feel like it's tidy, and maybe the difference between us is I spent a lot of time with the government, and the government is sometimes can be really, really dysfunctional, and it goes back to keeping a secret. The idea that they could have this what essentially is a covert action campaign, to spread disinformation about what they actually know, right? When the easier thing to do is just to have the program, if it's the U.S. government's development of technology, right, and we're doing this, to have the program and just keep your yap shut about it, not go for a disinformation campaign, not try to muddy the waters by doing this, because in a sense, you're just creating more conversation around it. You're creating now there's a little bit of a, movement within Congress to say we have to do this. Now we have to. So they're going to look perhaps for a misappropriation of funds, right? Because they're not going to pursue like the UAP issue necessarily, right? But they might be interested in pursuing the misappropriation of funds. So if you're running a program, if it didn't, again, going back to the idea that it's a U.S. government thing, if you're running a program, that's the last thing you want to do is because you're doing this program to avoid government oversight. You're not going to create this alternative narrative that, could generate the sort of publicity or the conversation, particularly up on Capitol Hill, that causes them to then start looking and saying, well, where is money being spent? Right. Because there is a trail there, and that could cause a problem. So are your instincts when you look at it? If I'm looking at it, I'm saying something's wrong, it seems like bullshit. What are your instincts? I think I would like to, I don't think we're going to get there. But my instinct is to say, how do we solve this, or how do we come to some sort of logical resolution, as opposed to saying what is it right off the bat. My instinct is to say, all right, if the all-domain anomaly resolution office has 800 cases, then tell us what those 800 cases are. Let's work our way through them, or have a little bit more transparency about working through those cases. Again, you'll probably whittle them down, right? We were doing Black Files and we were going around talking to people about, various sightings and things. You're basically just crossing things off, going, okay, that was this, that was this, that was this. You find some pretty mundane answers, but you whittle it down to maybe one or two things that you can't explain, and then you can investigate those and say, okay, well, all right, let's dig further on these. But right now it's just like all over the map, and they've got so many cases, and they just kind of lump it all together. Are they doing that to obfuscate and create, this situation where it does seem like bullshit? And I don't know, but I think I'm not willing to shut the door on saying that those handful of those few sightings that where we do have technical data, we got video, we got radar lock, we got gun camera footage, whatever it may be, that can't be explained. I'm not willing to close the door and saying, well, it's is it, because who knows? Maybe China's doing the same thing. Oh, we're leading the hypersonic race right now, great, but they've got another program, and they were responsible for the Tic Tac, right? So we have to pursue it, and if that leads us to the doorstep that says, oh, that's a U.S. government program and they've developed the technology, okay. Fine, but I realize that I'm not willing to close the door on saying it could be something else. It could be otherworldly, right? Because I just don't know. It could be. I just don't know.
There is
who knows?
That album, the infinite nature of space, which seems to actually be getting bigger.
Yeah, there was a way of putting it that my wife, who's a hell of a lot smarter than I am, tried to explain it to me, and I kept looking at it like this. But she had heard a program at one point where the person explained it like, okay, imagine how vast the ocean is, right? And how we've explored the ocean, but then you look at space and how immense it is, right, compared to the ocean, right?
Right.
The amount that we've explored in space, right, is equivalent to like a wine glass full of ocean water, right? So you take a wine glass full of ocean water, you look at it and you go, there's nothing there, right? There's all those life forms. There's all those fish in the sea. It's kind of like that. And then, you think about space and you think about what we know and what we don't know, and how we imagine, like our limited capacity to imagine what life outside of Earth could look like. Right. So yeah.
But when you talk of like crashed retrieval programs.
Yeah. That keeps taking me back and is, to this whole idea of, if there was a crash retrieval and reverse engineering program like David Grush talked about and had been in existence for decades, somebody would have fucking opened their yap and talked about it. I think
other than Bob Lazar,
and they would have had some better specifics, right? I mean, that's always the thing. It's always where it falls down. Well, I haven't seen it, but I talked to somebody who knows that it exists, right? And I think maybe it's because we're human, we're programmed to actually want physical evidence, right? We want to actually see it before we believe it. But, that really hasn't happened yet.
What's one of the things that's fascinating is the narrative has shifted so wildly from it's completely preposterous to credible people like David Fravor and Ryan Graves and all these different people that are talking about multiple sightings, things that completely defy our understanding of what a vehicle is capable of doing, hovering completely motionless in 120 knot winds, all the whole, whatever that thing is, the cube inside a sphere that they keep seeing over and over again.
Right.
Like,
Almost hit one of the aircraft.
Yeah.
And,
the fuck is that?
Yeah. And then they land. So I think, one of the good developments out of all of this, and one of the things that may eventually lead to transparency, right? Because it will provide an avenue for these sightings, whether it's commercial or military pilots, as an example, to report it. Right, and to be more, and for the government to take it, perhaps, again, it depends on whether it's a big conspiracy or not, to investigate in a more logical manner and in a more detailed manner. So I think just again the sheer act that we're talking about it, which then takes me back to the idea that if you're running a secret program, you don't want people talking about it, so you're not going to muddy the waters with a false narrative if you don't have to. Right. If your concern is that someone's getting close to the truth and you got to do, okay, then maybe so. But,
Do you think it's also possible there are patriots that do think that the American public deserves to know about this information and they have been sitting on it for a long time? That people like David Grush and all these various that are coming out, and more apparently are wanting to come out. But.
Yeah. Well, interesting thing with Grush is, look, he said so during the hearing, right? He said, I can't talk about that. I can talk about it in a skiff, right? In a sensitive, secure environment. All right. Well, if I'm, one of the people on that subcommittee, I'm going to say, to my staff, schedule, a skiff meeting with Grush. Get him in here, and let's, have him talk classified shit.
Right.
So that would be the next logical step in all of this.
Have they done that yet?
I don't know. I mean, it's.
When he said I could talk to you about it in a skiff, have people taken him up on that?
Well, you'd have to ask him. No, I wouldn't know.
Right, and they wouldn't tell anybody.
And therein lies part of the problem, because if he sits there but if he sits in the skiff and continues to kind of say, well, okay, you guys aren't clear to hear this, and I can't. All right. Then you got to start questioning, what he's actually got or what he knows for sure, rather than just having this witness interviews and sort of secondhand information. But I'm much more. I guess the point is I'm much more interested in the direct sightings than witness interviews. Right.
And the thing about he's not really a witness. Right. He hasn't had any personal encounters with anything. Right. He hasn't had personal encounter with a craft. He hasn't seen a retrieved craft. He hasn't seen the biological entities. These are all just programs that he's been made aware of that he felt like people needed to know about. That's the narrative.
And again, not to disparage anybody, right? I mean, look, he's, if in fact, somebody leaked his medical records, which it looks like, did happen, right? Then that's pretty bullshit. Mm-hmm. Somebody needs to figure out what the hell is happening.
Let's see this. The information from Grush, who's unable to discuss specifics on what he told the Pentagon's watchdog arm. Lawmakers want to sit down with the former official in a sensitive compartmented information facility, a SCIF, to get additional information from him. The group has been blocked, however, by officials that have informed them that Grush doesn't currently have security clearance to discuss the issues in a SCIF, according to Burchett. We think that we'll get there eventually. It's just frustrating. I'm ready to go, and the American public are ready to go, he said. Luna argued that the SCIF with Grush could help lawmakers better understand the type of legislation they need to write regarding UAPs. She said she supports legislation that would declassify information on the phenomenon. So there seems to be some issue of secrecy and what possible to discuss or legal to discuss.
Well, yeah, look, the government casts a very wide net when you're talking about classified information. Right. I mean, the government has overclassified information for decades and decades, right? And you've got secret, top secret, code word, and they tend to just hoover everything up and classify it, right? And then it takes fucking forever, right, to go through that process of declassification, and because nobody wants to put their neck out at that point and say, yeah, let's declassify this, right? Once it's in that pot, But the question is, great, you're saying, you can talk about it in the SCIF. Well, damn it, then that's the next, that's what the subcommittee should be doing. Right? That's their job, right? If they're curious, right? And if they're sincere about trying to get to the bottom of this, and that's theoretically their job, then they should, because again, going back to the main thing, and people can say, well, why are you wasting your time on this? But you can always circle back to the top line, which is it's for national security purposes. We want to know what the hell's going on.
Right.
And you know, if so, yeah, we'll see. I guess that's the question that should be thrown at Grush, or should be thrown at the subcommittee members.
I'm also shocked how few people care. I feel like people are so overloaded with information today because of social media and because of the news cycle. People are so overloaded with information that this barely registered on people other than UFO nuts.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there was a surprising amount, I thought, anyway, of sort of mainstream media coverage. It wasn't particularly deep, right? It just kind of covered, okay, it was a hearing. And I think they did it because, look, it's UFOs or UAPs, right? And so, you know, they knew they'd get some clicks on it if they were putting it online or whatever. And they didn't pursue it, you know, like has been any, I haven't seen any stories that talked about the follow-up with Grush. There were a couple of stories talking about the fact that perhaps his medical records were leaked, you know, as a result.
And the
of
medical records showed what? That he had some sort of a psychiatric condition? That he had an event or something like that?
PTSD, I think he, you know, some suicidal depression issues.
Standard stuff with military veterans.
He had done his time in Afghanistan, right? And so that doesn't, it means nothing, and except for the fact that it shouldn't be out there, right? The record should be damn well private.
Well, not only isn't that what we want, why don't you shut your little dinger off there, fella?
Is that me going?
Yeah, that's why your phone rang,
too. What the hell? God,
got to learn how to use that little switch on the side. But
thank you for my IT lesson.
Isn't that what you want from? I mean, that's the whole purpose of providing these services for veterans. That when they do have suicidal thoughts and they are struggling with PTSD, that they get help. I mean, the idea that they're shaming him and saying that his report is not credible because of this seems ridiculous.
Bullshit. Yeah.
It's totally bullshit.
Yeah, and he said he's come out since and said, look, I did help. I'm in a better place. And he was happy that people were talking about it. They should be talking about it. Look, we lose a shocking number of veterans to suicide, right? And it's disgusting that we don't, that the government doesn't work harder at this, right? And spend more effort. I know a couple of people who do amazingly good work at the VA in terms of counselors, right? They're not managers, they're not executives. They work with the veterans every day, right? And it's incredible what they do. But overall, as a government, our assistance, right, to veterans. I mean, you look at the number of homeless situations. It's pathetic. And so when he talks about it, it's good that he's talking about it, right? I think that transparency helps, and he clearly views it that way too. And he said, look, I don't have any problem with discussing it, but we should be concerned by the fact that somehow his medical records were put out there. And then, some people will look at that and go, well, is that the government's effort to discredit him? Or is that somebody's effort to discredit him? I don't know why anybody else would. Why would you do that?
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Let me ask you this one then. What do you think about all this, the Pentagon saying that there's crafts that are coming from another world?
That's New World Order.
What do you think that is, though?
Getting people to believe in the fake alien invasion.
So what do those things are these people keep saying?
It's probably, who knows? The Nazis were scaring their people with UFOs. They made UFOs, and they were scaring people. It's like look at the timeline.
The Nazis were trying to develop some kind of an actual flying saucer,
and they were scaring people, and they were using look, we're going to save you. Look, UFOs. They were scaring them. The government's going to save you from the UFOs, right? So 1946, World War II's over. 1946-47, Operation Paperclip. That's when we took a bunch of Nazis and Russia took a bunch of Nazis. And so 1947, Roswell. Right there. Roswell was the beginning of the UFO craze. Right after Roswell, all these comic books, Mars Attacks, in the 50s, all these shitty-ass space movies and alien movies. There was Star Trek came, but Roswell kicked it off. That was the first one that kicked it off. So wow, that's 1947. That's right when we brought in all the Nazis. Who knows, man? Maybe them Nazis were like, dude, you guys aren't scaring your people with UFOs. You dumb motherfuckers, just get on it. Boom. So that Roswell, like, they just take some craft, and then they get the people that they interview probably think it was real. Like, dude, it was a crash.
So you think it was an orchestrated crash just to freak people out?
I think
that
so.
seems like a money top.
Oh, you
cover it up and hide it?
When anything too expensive? When is anything too expensive for the government?
But the official answer was never that it was a craft. The official answer was that it's a fucking weather balloon, and everybody believed that.
They
showed that.
But people that believe in UFOs, like myself and you, back in the day, I no longer. I have a different view of UFOs now. But back then, we didn't care that they said, like, the fact that they said that, oh, it's just a weather balloon. We were like, oh, dude, you guys are bullshit, and you're trying to cover up the real shit.
So they're playing 3D chess.
Exactly. So that's what I think.
So you think it's drones? I'm of the opinion.
Drones, and you know how there was a little red laser point? You know, you fuck with your cat with that shit? You go, tsh, tsh, it's incredible speeds.
Yeah, but there's some stuff. Like the Commander David Fravor one is pretty impossible.
For sure they're seeing stuff. Like, I think Bob saw some shit. Yeah. I think they set him up. That's what I think. I think he's telling the truth, but they set him up. That's what they do. That's what William Cooper said. He was set up too. He worked for the Office of Naval Intelligence, setting up meetings, like high-level meetings, and he thinks that he was setting up meetings and looking at documents going, oh shit, they're going to be discussing crash UFO shit and reverse engineering crash UFOs. So at first he believed it. Then eventually he realized, oh, they set him up.
So they set him up so that he'll talk about it.
He thinks they set up due to talk a lot big mouths that are drunks. That's what he thinks. They set them up and they fucking, and that's what he
set
believes.
them big mouths that are drunks because they know they're going to give out the information.
And they want them to talk.
So they get in there. They let them see it. And
they go, don't go in there. We'll be right back. Don't go in that room. We're going to go. And then they go in. They see like Philip Corso. Remember that guy? From the Pentagon back in the day when I was into all this shit, I would like, look, dude from the Pentagon is saying it. Of course it's got to be true. Dude, a Navy pilot is saying it. Of course, they're the most credible. You're like, but now looking back, I'm like, dude, now of course it's the dude in the Pentagon. Philip Corso said, he wrote a book the day after or something. He wrote a book about how he saw the bodies in the coffins. He saw the bodies. He goes, I was there. I saw the bodies. I mean, so either he really saw alien bodies, like he walked in a room and they were in a casket and it was an open casket or something like that. Either he really saw that or he did see it and they weren't real or something and he was set up.
Imagine
they set him up.
Fucking crazy diseases would come from an alien body. Can you imagine they would just have an alien body in a room and you could do an autopsy on it with one of those stupid masks on?
Yeah.
Can you imagine? Just stop and think of that. Because think about like the Europeans that came to North America and killed 90% of the Native Americans with smallpox. Imagine what the fuck aliens have. Imagine what shit that is in there. If they're a biological creature, they probably exist like we do. We're filled with bacteria. We're filled, like there's more E. coli in your gut than have ever been people ever. We're filled with this stuff. Mm-hmm. Imagine what kind of crazy diseases some alien body would have that you have no immunity to. Yeah. No, and just ravages the population. Everyone's dead. And these guys just have these little stupid masks on. They're cutting into this alien.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Imagine seeing the first nuke go off and realize that nothing's ever going to be the same again. When they drop that first nuke in a city, just like, oh my God, what have you done? Yeah. What have you done? And what precedent have you set? It's kind of really, truly amazing that we haven't done it since then.
Yeah. That's what makes me believe in the aliens and multi-dimensional beings and shit.
Really?
Because
isn't it mutually assured destruction as well?
No, I'm saying like when humanity got all the nuclear bombs and shit, that's when you start to see all the sightings and stuff. Mm-hmm. So that's why it kind of makes sense that they'd be like, oh, what are you doing? We can't let you blow up your whole fucking planet before you even evolve to your first level, because for all we know, we're still white belts.
Right. Well, leafcutter have no idea that you have a car. They have no idea. They have no idea what a Bitcoin is.
Yeah.
They have no idea, what 4G is. They don't know shit.
And they know about cutting leaves and beans.
But they're around it all the time. It's very possible that there's some shit like that in other dimensions that are equally bizarre. that we are not connected to all the time, and they might be here all the time. And if that's the case, then it makes sense that they would start showing up when we were in the middle of dropping nukes on each other. They'd be like, hey, 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 hey.
It'd be like when your parents heard you just miss shit out of each other in the other room. They come in there like, all right, fucking settle down.
Settle down, boys.
You're hook up the drywall now.
Yeah, you guys are crashing into fucking TVs and shit. They're like, hey.
That's all it is.
That's
We're
enough.
just their dumb kids in the
Yeah.
next room
It might
making
be
a bunch of
something similar.
noise.
Because maybe they needed to let us know, like, hey, there's some other folks here, and they're way more advanced, and settle the fuck down.
And we're
You know?
trying to bring you along, just, you know.
The problem is all that stuff is it's so hard to know what's true and what's bullshit. Just like the Bigfoot thing. It's so hard to... Well, the Bigfoot thing's way easier, right? But the UFO thing, see, there's way more evidence. It's so hard to know what's bullshit. It's so hard. It's so hard to know who's telling the truth and who's lying. It's so hard to know what involvement the government has in terms of, like, how many of these things are drones. You know, you're hearing now that a lot of these people that believe that these things are flying around, they think that what we're dealing with is some sort of a government drone. And that a lot of this off-world craft talk is really just misinformation so that they don't have to take accountability for having some crazy thing that China doesn't have, or maybe China has that we don't have, and then they want to lie about it, you know, and try to develop whatever the fuck they have.
Yeah. And when you find out what they're really doing, then it's like, oh, okay, now this makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Now that makes sense because you're having to fucking do all this to develop that. And
Well, you know, there's a whole conspiracy about the invention of the transistor, because the transistor came about right after Roswell. And there's a company called Bell Labs, and Bell Labs I believe they were the people that invented the transistor. And there was a military base right outside of Bell Labs. And they had always said that military base was to protect New York City. But it was pretty far from New York City. Like, if you wanted to protect New York City, you put a base a lot closer. You wouldn't put it so far away where it'd take them like 40 minutes to fly there.
Yeah.
But Bell Labs is a wild place. And that was one of the main focal points of conspiracy theorists when they were talking about back engineering stuff from crashed UFOs, was fiber optics and transistors, and that they all came about very shortly after Roswell. And people don't exactly know how they figured those out.
those were probably the most basic things that they recovered. So they were the easiest to figure out. So that's why we had them first. And there's like, it's just like those fucking PlayStations. How they release a better one every few years. Maybe they had PlayStation 5 in 95, but they're still giving us PlayStation 1 because they want to sell all 5.
Well, they can't just a time machine.
Yeah.
They have to give us a spaceship first.
Yep.
Like, first of all, you got to figure out travel, you morons.
And we won't even need a fucking spaceship once we got a time machine.
Yeah.
You
Then
know?
we'll give you the big machine.
Yeah.
That takes time. You got to get to a higher level civilization. Have you heard of a Dyson sphere? Do you know what a Dyson sphere is?
I've heard of it. What is it? I don't know.
Well, it's a massive structure that some astronomers believe could indicate highly advanced intelligent life somewhere in the universe. They've never been discovered, but they've been theorized. That there was this article that I was reading yesterday about it. See if you can find it.
So it can like tell you where it would be?
Well, they think they're massive structures that are like literally like a structure the size of a solar system.
And somebody made that and those fucking things are out there?
Well, this was just theorized, right? When they're talking about the highest potential level of technological ability.
That you could get to?
Yeah, I mean, imagine if you got to a place where you had a self-contained solar system that's completely controlled by these intelligent beings, but that's immune to all of the hazards.
And what
of
if we're
space.
in that motherfucker?
We might be.
That's the simulation.
We might
man.
be. We might be. We might
And
be.
Thanos is like
A Type 2 civilization can directly harvest the energy of its star using a Dyson sphere or something similar.
so it like is solar powered basically.
Well, I don't know what the fuck it is. I mean, I think it's totally theoretical. There's no real versions of them that are out there. But the idea is that if technological proficiency and innovation continues at the level that it is now for millions of years, what does it get to?
Yeah. You know what? It's probably going to get weirder than that. Because the shit you can imagine,
Right.
like the 80s when you fucking had a Walkman.
Right.
Whoa, what are they going to have in a few years?
Right.
I'll be able to you probably thought it was still going to be a cassette tape. Like when you watch The Fifth Element or Blade Runner, they're still using fucking telephones. They didn't even think of cell phones.
Right.
But that's our most obvious thing that we have right now.
Star Trek, the walkie-talkie.
Yeah.
Kirk out.
Right, because you're still like relating it from like
That's
1960
the
million
of
shit.
space.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly, dude.
That's not the
That's
Unreal
Pong.
5 engine.
So it's
That's
going
Pong.
to fuck God of War. Holy shit!
It's going to keep going. That's what I think artificial intelligence is. I think, and I don't really think this. This is just a thought. Maybe the universe is God, and maybe the way God is created is through intelligent life. That intelligent life creates a far superior version of itself in artificial intelligence, and that creates a far better version of itself infinitely. They just keep making better versions of itself as it has more of an understanding and more capacity, and it grows and it makes better versions of itself. It's eventually going to get to godlike powers. The power to create universes, the power to create solar systems, the power to stop time, reverse time, the power to traverse immense distances instantaneously. It'll have capabilities that we could only imagine. We could just imagine if, and it can do that.
Yeah.
I mean, if we look at how we're living right now in comparison to how people were living when they were making those cave paintings, like wow.
Yeah.
Insane.
Cave
Insane.
paintings to fucking... Yeah, but what's the things they can do? The 3D printing? 3D printing?
Yeah.
That's fucking crazy,
No,
dude.
it's insane.
I mean...
Well, that thing the spaceships are made out of now.
Yeah.
Like when Bob Lazar was first examining, if he's telling the truth, when Bob Lazar was first examining the spaceships, the thing that blew him away was there was no seams. It didn't make any sense. Like how could one even make something like this? Well, now that we know, there's 3D printers, and you could make something like that.
Yeah.
You could, I mean... I don't think you can make it that scale yet, but if you had enough of a capability, you had machines that could do it.
Well, yeah, I mean, if we thought it,
yeah,
and we're doing it, and they're fucking 60 million light years ahead of us.
Right. Like, who's to say not? Who's to say they're not 60,000 years ahead of us, or 600,000, or 6 million?
Or, like, think about it. Fucking time machine, you could go back to check out some shit that already happened, but you could also go forward. I mean... We just have no comprehension of what you could... Maybe you could, like, start a project in your lab, right? And then travel... And you get all these fucking AI robots to work on it. And then you travel way forward in time and go get it. And then bring it back.
Ooh,
and then
instantly.
It's the fucking ultimate thing.
Ooh.
You know? Like, that's what I'd be doing if I had time machines. I'd be like, all right, I'm going to get all these fucking... helpers to build these awesome monuments, and then I'm going to go in forward in time and check on it. All right, did you know what I mean? Like, it would just give you, if you could manipulate time and travel through time like it's an element. Like, have you ever checked out?
But you wouldn't be able to experience it because, like, you would always be involved in time being manipulated. So there'd be no static time. So even in this static time, something could intervene instantaneously, always.
Right,
forever.
but what if we don't understand the nature of time to make those definitions? What if you could get this time machine, what if you could kind of like step out of time in a lot of different ways that you don't think would, you know what I'm saying?
Right. Like you could go into a timeline and you don't even necessarily affect timeline.
If you just observe it.
Right.
And not like physically disturb it.
But you do affect it if you go forward in the future. The idea of a time machine, the current idea of a time machine, is that you can't travel where there are no roads. So once a time machine is invented, then everything from that time machine is invented forward becomes a completely different way of using time. Because time now is nonlinear.
Yep.
Time now,
it's
anyone can go. So
thing.
everything happens all at once.
Yep.
So people from the future will be traveling back to the moment where the first time machine is invented. So everything will change instantly.
Yeah.
Because if you're gonna invent a time machine and you live 1 million years in the future, assuming that humans even exist, if a time machine gets invented, I mean, we might become obsolete almost instantaneously. But if you were a live human being 1 million years after the time machine is invented, you would want to go back to the moment the thing was made. You'd want, and so the moment they turn that motherfucker on, everything changes forever.
Yeah, singularity.
Yeah, that might be the real singularity.
Yeah.
That was one of the McKenna's theories. Terrence McKenna believed that we were going to come up with a time machine. He thought that was going to happen around December 21st, 2012.
Well, have you checked out his time wave zero and all that?
Yeah.
And you know they came up with that, those Taoist priests and shit?
How did they?
The fucking I Ching, dude. They would go into
right.
like deep meditations and they would take mushrooms too. And they found out that time can be mapped and like predicted. That's where the fucking I Ching comes from. People in the 60s got all into the I Ching.
The I Ching is like a game, right?
No, it's a book. It's made up of. I'm not like an expert on it.
But isn't there a game that's involved with the I Ching that McKenna sort of patented?
That's Time Wave Zero.
Time Wave Zero on.
I don't know if he made a game of it, but it's
is
not,
the I Ching a game?
It's like a fortune telling system.
That's what it's like. It's like a form of
divination.
Divination, right? Yeah, it is like a fortune telling thing. That's what it's not a game.
Yeah.
I was trying to remember how I haven't heard his stuff in a long time. Try to remember how he described it. But most people that have looked at Time Wave Zero think it's kind of nonsense, including guys like Paul Stamets. They're like, hey, he was probably tripping real hard when he came up with that.
I don't know. I think it's above their head, dude.
It might be.
I think
it also is a ridiculous thing to subscribe to. So a lot of people are reluctant to like open themselves up to ridicule.
But so is everything's ridiculous. What's all these like religions and everything that everybody fucking is into? Everything's ridiculous. So nothing is Taoism and Time Wave Zero isn't any more ridiculous than anything else that people are fucking tarot cards. I think it's really interesting because I really get into ancient Chinese culture. Like I was into Kung Fu at a young age, so I've studied a lot of Chinese philosophy, Taoism, all that stuff. Those people are highly intelligent, spiritual people who are doing deep meditations and discovering really profound truths. I think that we are at a level where we're so intellectual that we're almost too intellectual. So it's almost like we can only think about things in this scale. Like people see in a certain frequency, they can only see certain lights, but like dogs can hear sounds we can't hear. Others,
right.
So it's just like that. It's like our fucking intellect is like this, and we can figure out all. But
because we exist within the context of our culture.
Because we fall in love with this,
right? Our mind.
But there's also this, and your spirit. That's what figured out the Tao Te Ching. That's what figured out. How to tame horses and be one with them and domesticate primates. It wasn't just us thinking cerebrally. That's kind of limited. I think our real being is deeper than that.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Kyle Kalinske sent me something I wanted you to see, Jamie. It's there's some shit going down with UFO sightings.
Oh yeah.
I've been played before.
Well, yeah,
I don't know that they were new.
Here, I'll send it to you.
I've been following this stuff.
Yeah, it's hold on a second, Jamie.
This thing.
All right, I just texted it to you. Pentagon officially releases UFO. This is the tweet. It says, new Pentagon formally released 3 mysterious UFO videos captured by Navy pilots. The already leaked videos showed what DoD insists on calling unidentified aerial phenomenon, moving at incredible speeds and performing near impossible maneuvers. This is a weird subject because it's one of those subjects where people automatically dismiss it because it's been so touted by kooks. There's so many wacky fucks that have talked about UFOs that anybody talking about UFOs has to be out of their fucking mind. But then when you see these videos and you see them performing these possible tasks, like these things are moving in a way that we've never seen anything move before. Flipping upside down and sideways, moving at insane rates of speed. Like, they don't know what these are.
Yeah.
Real phenomena.
What's interesting, though, is I was reading one of these stories, and they passively mentioned that the sighting was near a U.S. naval technology station of some sort, like a top secret development. And I'm like,
that could be one of two. It's either it's developed by the people that are at that base, or they're monitoring the people that are at that base. These aircraft, we call them aircraft, are displaying characteristics that are not currently within the U.S. inventory nor any foreign inventory that we are aware of. Maybe they see the shit that's going down with China and all the ships being moved and like, listen, you fuckheads.
The aliens?
Yeah. Maybe they're like, listen, you fucking morons, you territorial apes.
I'd like to think that, but...
You don't think so?
Manhattan Project, man. I mean, the U.S. has got some crazy motherfucking weapons. You know?
Could be, but the Manhattan Project was also, coincidentally, right after they started detonating bombs when the aliens started showing up.
That's what they think, right?
Yeah, well, that was when the bulk of U.S. sightings started jumping. And wide, I believe, too.
You know, maybe we've slowly been getting more and more information about this. I've been actually reading a lot of these stories over the past several months. More admissions from government, more release of documents, and more sightings. So there's been a big, I don't want to call it, well, a lot of people murmuring that April was going to be the month when we finally learn the truth.
It's almost up.
It's almost up.
We got like a few days.
Nah, man.
The 27th?
You know what I
How
used?
many more days is left?
Do you know?
30? 30?
Do you know about what happened? Do you know about the O'Hare Airport sighting?
Which one's that?
So this was, I think, in like 06 at Chicago's International O'Hare. A UFO came down and hovered above. I can't remember which terminal it was. It hovered for a few minutes, I think, and then shot straight, punched a hole in the clouds. Everybody saw it happen. Now, I had just quit working at O'Hare around this time when the sighting happened, so I had friends who were still there. I had a friend tell me that when this UFO came down, people on Mannheim Road, which is the road on the side of O'Hare, got out of their cars, like just stopped the light, got up, and were looking and staring at it. And that the people who were working, where we worked for American Eagle Airlines, walked out of the rooms and were just staring at it float and then shoot up and punch a hole in the clouds. And you know what they said? Weather phenomenon. So there's a photo of it. A pilot took a photo of it. This is back when like very early phone cameras, so it's a very grainy, awful picture.
There it is right there.
That's not it. No, that's super fake. I think... No, these are all people trying to fake it. It's really hard to find. That one is not... That one might be it, but I don't think so. It barely looks like
Chicago
anything.
O'Hare UFO sighting 2006. Is that it right there?
I do not believe those are it, no. So
Well, click on that article. See what it says, Jamie.
That's just some blog.
That one might be on the left, but so many people try exploiting this stuff for clicks and for views, and they make these fake photos. And
That link's not working?
I've clicked on it a few times.
It was a very, very faint photo from the cockpit. It might be that one right there in the middle. On the on the left side.
Far left.
It might be that one. No, that's not it. That's not it. Well, there was a really crappy photo of it, and
that might be it.
That might be. It was out of the cockpit of a window. A pilot took a photo, and you know, I wonder where have all the sightings gone since phones became ubiquitous. I mean, there's a simple, you know, I guess excuse. The aliens, they're sentient. They know we have phones. They're like, okay, stop, you know, decloaking or whatever. But I wonder if, you know, why is it there were so many UFOs and then around the time cell phone cameras come out, they're gone?
Well, I think most people are full of shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think most people like to pretend they see things that don't really see things. But I don't think that excludes the possibility. It's not like it's not like these things are mutually exclusive. Like people are full of shit, therefore aliens don't exist. I think aliens could be real and people are full of shit. And I think that it's very rare that they visit us. But if they do, well, how often do scientists go to the Congo to study chimps? I mean, how many people do they send to the bottom of the ocean to look for new life forms? How rare is it?
Let me trip you out on that idea. We put decoys up for animals. Animals can't tell the difference. What if you've actually met a decoy person and you couldn't tell the difference?
Maybe it's you.
Maybe it's me. That's right.
And that's why you're able to work so much.
Oh, yeah, I'm a robot.
You don't get tired.
No.
So you're interested in news, disseminating factual evidence.
Because what I'm actually doing is collecting a data for the aliens. No, but I thought about this because I saw a photo on Reddit of a puffin, I think it's called, the bird. Mm-hmm. And they put up a fake puffin. And it's because, I think they're called puffins. It's because the birds don't like, you know, nesting in places where they're alone. Mm-hmm. And so by putting the decoy there, the other birds would start coming. And like one bird showed up and was hanging out with the decoy. And I'm like, could you imagine, like, you see, like, we put duck decoys in the water. We do duck calls. And the duck's like, ooh, hey, fly honey, I'm going to come over and check this out. And it's like a wood block. Could you imagine, like, seeing, like, a beautiful woman or someone you're attracted to and being like, ooh, look at that. And it's really like an alien decoy just to, like, probe you and like better understand you or something?
Well, the decoy, just the term decoy is weird because decoys are used for hunting. Like turkey, it's turkey season right now.
Yeah.
And the way most guys hunt for turkeys, they take a rubber turkey. You put that fucker out in the middle of the field, and then you hide behind a bush with a shotgun. You go, bark, 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 bark. And then the turkeys like hear it, and they come over and they try to get some pussy, and then they get shot.
So what if you see some dude and or see it, for you it'd probably be a beautiful woman, you want to get that pussy, and and then she's going like, hey, come over here, and you're like, oh hey, me, and
then I get eaten.
No, they just take you up in the ship, probe you, and learn about your butt.
This is the putting things up your butt.
I'm
Most
just kidding,
doctors
man.
don't even do that. Like they have MRIs now. Do you think aliens need to probe you in your ass? I think it's just what everyone's afraid of. They're afraid of things going in their ass. So that's what they think is going to happen if the aliens get them. They're going to freeze me and touch my ass.
Somebody told the dumbs back in the day, and it was the most sensational version. Everybody had to have it, so they were like, that's what they went with.
Maybe, or maybe they do that to keep your mouth shut. They fuck you in the ass just so you keep your mouth shut.
Or some dude actually did, right?
Yeah.
And he comes back and he's like, they think they won against me. They think they beat me. They put stuff up my butt. They're weirdos.
Do you ever hear
They're
the story of Betty and Barney Hill? It's the very first UFO abduction story. It's an ancient story. And what's crazy is Angela Hill, who's a UFC fighter, I had her on the podcast. And after the show, she told me her grandpa was Barney Hill.
Whoa.
And I was like, holy fuck. Like, we didn't talk about it during the show, but she wanted to bring it up because she knows I'm kind of obsessed with UFOs. But the account that they have, like, they get hypnotized and he's recalling the abduction and they have, like, the same story. It's very terrifying. You hear him crying and screaming and, that he was taken aboard this craft and examined and brought back and they have missing time. But here's the thing. If they only did that occasionally, they only came down once every few years and just scooped some person up in the middle of some rural place. Like if you're flying over, I think their instance was I believe it was in Maine. If you're flying over somewhere like Maine, which is a very low population state, and you see a lone car and it's just traveling along the highway, and there's places in Maine where you go from like Portland to Bangor. When you're traveling on that road, it's like 60 miles with nothing, not a gas station, nothing. If you were an alien and you saw a car by itself, you're like, no other car, let's move in, we got one.
Isn't it just easy? Think it's the U.S. government?
No.
Why not?
Because we don't have the capability of doing something like that. I don't think the capability of the scientists working for the government is any different than the capability of the scientists that are working for Project X or, fill in the blanks in terms of like what Raytheon, publicly traded companies.
How long? Look, quadcopters don't seem all that complicated to me. Right?
Quadcopters.
Yeah. Like
helicopters?
Like drones. We've seen the little drone toys you buy. They got 4 propellers. Take that concept, use thinner, jets and surround it in a disc so that it's, universally, like it can move in any direction because it's got, because it's
what
omnidirectional.
power source? The gas tank.
Lithium-ion battery. Or
come on, man. You're talking shit. Like this hasn't even been invented yet. Think about how little mileage you can get out of a Tesla.
They had
as advanced as Tesla is. Still, when it's going full out, it can only go for. You get 307 miles if you drive like a grandma, but if you drive like a maniac, you don't even get half that.
I could be wrong with this, but I'm pretty sure that they had this flying platform in the 70s that uses gas power. They've also had jetpacks for a long time.
No, they've sort of. They've had jetpacks that are capable of going for like 30 seconds. They don't. I've experienced.
No. I'm pretty sure the jetpack in the day went for a long time.
No, they definitely didn't.
We can look it up.
Yeah, let's look it up because they definitely didn't. The whole thing was the fact they were burning gas, and to propel you in the air, they only had a certain amount.
I thought it was like 20 minutes, 30 minutes.
Maybe now.
My understanding why we abandoned jetpack technology was that it was inefficient and heavy, and you couldn't carry it without it being turned on. So they opted for larger, what are they called? Chinooks. Helicopters that can carry multiple people at once. When you're wearing a jetpack, it has to be on idle, negating its own weight, which means it's burning as you're walking around, which means you get a good 20-minute jump and you got to abandon the tech. And then you don't want your enemies to get it.
Have you ever seen a guy with a jetpack?
Yeah, there's a video on YouTube.
No,
from a long time
in
ago.
real life.
Oh, I've seen that one guy, man, dude.
Well,
not in real life.
I've been there in real life. Willie B from in Denver on the radio.
Yeah.
He had a radio show in the morning. I used to do his radio show. I think he still has a radio show. Shout out to Willie. And he had this guy who was a jetpack pilot who came in the parking lot of the radio studio, and fans of the radio show came and did it too, and watched it rather. And this guy flew in the air for about 15, 20 seconds and then landed. This guy was so banged up. Both of his legs were blown apart. He had big braces on both of his knees. I'm like, what happened to your knees? He's like, just crash landing. Both my knees are blown to shit. He had no ACLs in either one of his knees. But
well, that's what I'm saying.
It's good for, this is Ben. It was good for about 30 seconds. 30 seconds of flying.
Well, so what I'm trying to get to is if you take something like a quadcopter, you could absolutely fuel it with gas or
It'd be
whatever.
loud as fuck.
But it would. Depending on how you mitigate
It'd be
the
an
noise.
engine. It'd be an engine.
Yeah.
It'd be loud as fuck.
And you'd hear from the quad rotors.
Yeah, but what these people are describing is nothing like that. These people are describing things that are silent, that go from 0 to 1,000 miles an hour in a split second. Things that defy physics as we understand them. Yeah. This is not something that I think that the U.S. government has. If you look at like Elon Musk company, Project X or SpaceX. SpaceX is right now one of the premier civilian companies, private companies that's making rocket ships. They fuck up all the time.
Totally.
They're in the middle of innovating all the time. He's one of the smartest people on earth. He's one of in terms of technology, he knows as much about propulsion as anyone, and they still can't get it right. They're still trying to figure it out. They're trying to come up with something that could be viable in terms of commercial space flight, and they're working on it daily. And these people are the brightest minds we know of right now that are in this jet propulsion, space travel business. There's, Virgin's working on something. There's a couple other companies that are working on things as well. And then you have NASA, which the best they could come up with was the space shuttle.
Right.
Do you think that there was something way better than space shuttle that they just never used, and that they had, and they kept it on the back burner, didn't want to let anybody know, but the way they would use it is they would pick people up and erase their memory and toy with their asshole? That's crazy.
Well,
that's less likely than the hundreds of billions of galaxies just in our own known universe, right? Each one with hundreds of billions of stars, each star with who knows how many fucking planets. That's somewhere out there that's something more advanced than us. Maybe 1,000 years, maybe 1,000,000 years. But that's figured out how to come here.
I got the same question then. Why hasn't anyone discovered them? Why has SETI failed? Search for extraterrestrial intelligence.
Why haven't they invented guns?
They've more tools, but
right. Why haven't they invented guns though?
I don't know.
Hasn't SETI found UFOs? It's the same fucking answer. They're not advanced enough yet. It's a real simple answer. The industrial age is pretty fucking recent.
Right.
I mean, you think about when people invented cars. You're talking about 1800. That's really recent.
And we've
plane
only used
flights, 1800s.
High power radio transmission is only in the past 100 years or so.
Right. Well, you saw the movie Contact.
That's an old one, right?
It's Joster and Matthew McConaughey. It's based on Carl Sagan's book about contact with space and with aliens, how it's going to go down.
I think I did see it recently. I can't remember.
Interesting take on it. But the idea is that they've received the signal that we sent out way, way back, in the day, actually when the first broadcast signal was Hitler announcing the Olympic Games, the start of the Berlin Games. And this was the first signal they got. It was a really controversial moment in the movie, or controversy, in the plot, with that once they were trying to decipher the image that was being sent, they realized it was Hitler.
Yeah.
The first thing they see is a swastika, and they're like, what the fuck is this?
They sent it back to us?
And then they had to realize, oh, no, this is the first image that we sent out to space. They wouldn't be able to understand the political or historical context of this. And
well, so I got a few, there's a few I see in terms of aliens and Earth contact, right? We are substantially more connected, in an evolutionary chain to ants than we are to any alien. So we can't communicate with them for the most part. We kind of can. We understand how they communicate. But when an ant sees a superhighway, this is someone else's quote, they don't think twice. So it's possible there are aliens that have superhighways right above us. We can't tell what it is. Same as a dog doesn't understand other than stay away from it. But one of the issues I think is often neglected in the conversation about aliens is we assume aliens would be on a very similar planet to us. We assume that they would have some kind of gaseous atmosphere, perhaps it's a liquid atmosphere. And one of the things that I would ask of a researcher, because I'm not the expert, is The fact that we have the proper balance of oxygen in the atmosphere to manipulate fire, which allows us to, separate elements and then create computers and components and fuels, wouldn't exist on a planet without the same, atmosphere we existed in.
Stop. I can answer that easily.
Yeah.
There's no known propulsion system for any of these crafts. These things are not using fire. They don't have a heat signal. They don't know what they are. They don't know how they work.
I don't mean propulsion. I mean the separation of elements, the manipulation of elements, right? So we melt things and separate them and break them down.
They don't believe that that's how it works.
No, but I mean, like, how do you even start from? I'm sure there's an answer. Let's say you have a species that lives on a planet with no oxygen and has no access to fire. What energy, what dense energy source do they have that will allow them to manipulate matter?
Do you know the Bob Lazar story?
I do.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that he talked about when he first stopped working for Area S4 and the government was tapping his phones, and there's a lot that can be documented about him. There's a lot that can't be. But one of the things that he talked about was a thing called element 115.
Right.
That element 115 is this insanely dense element that they use to bend gravity. And that the way he described the way the propulsion system works, it's like putting a bowling ball in the center of a very soft mattress, and that all of the other mattress, all the rest of the mass of the mattress bends around the intense mass of the bowling ball, and that this is how these incredibly advanced aliens from this other planet this is their propulsion system.
That was
they use this.
from Star Wars. The concept of warp was around for a really long time.
I think the concept is based on Einstein's theory of gravity. I mean, this is the whole idea. If you could find something that could do that. But here's the thing. When Bob Lazar talked about this in the late 80s, early 90s, this element didn't exist.
Right. Now it does.
It wasn't proven until they did it in a particle collider. I believe it was 2013. So he was talking about this element far before it was, and he's apparently, this is the big rumor, he apparently had taken some of that from a lab and through George Norrie, and was it George Norrie? Yes. They did some experiments on on television and showed that this stuff had made light and fog bend in a way that they couldn't describe.
He also didn't he also claim a small alien creature on his way out?
He said he saw something sitting down, but he doesn't know if it was a model that they were using, like if they had created something that was supposed to be the size of a thing that could fit in these crafts, because these crafts, he said, were designed for things that were far smaller than human beings.
I'm pretty initial interview he gave when he went public was that he saw an alien, and then later on changed it saying, I don't know if it was maybe a model or a puppet.
Yeah, he thought he saw something down and two people standing over it looking at it. He said he thought he saw an alien. But he's probably, I don't know. Look, he said it was literally for like a half a second. Like he's walking by a window and he sees something inside of it. Imagine being a guy who's in your 20s and you're a propulsions expert, and it's been proven that he worked at Los Alamos Labs, and it's been proven that he did put a fucking jet engine. It's been proven that he did put a jet engine on a Honda. He's a genius. And you talk to him, he's an incredibly smart guy. Now imagine you get sent off to Area S4, and they show you this thing that doesn't even exist, and they tell you about this propulsion method that they don't understand, and they say that they found this a long time ago in an archaeological dig, and they want you to back engineer it because you're a propulsions expert, and they're running out of options. They've been studying this for decades. No one knows what the fuck it is or how you can make it work. And then they do test flights with this thing, and then he tells his friends about these test flights. After he gets fired, you know how he got fired? Do you know a story about him getting fired?
He leaked it or something, yeah?
No, his wife was fucking her flight instructor.
Oh.
And so when his wife was fucking her flight instructor, they told him he couldn't work anymore. And he's like, why not? Well, they were tapping his phone because when you have top secret clearance to work on UFOs, I guess they don't want your wife fucking her flight instructor, because then you're going to go crazy, and you have a lot of imbalance at home, right? So he doesn't know why. They don't tell him why. So he takes his friends and he tells them, listen, this is real. They're running these experiments. I know you're thinking I'm crazy. This is what I've been working on. So he takes them to this area where you used to be able to have access to, but once he did this, they closed off access and pushed it far back to where the public has access to. And he showed them these things doing these impossible maneuvers in the desert, in the night sky.
This I remember.
And so then he gets arrested. And so when he gets arrested, he was in fear of his own life. He goes public and tells this whole story. And then they erase his past. They erase his social security number. They erase his education background. Even though people that knew him and knew he worked at Los Alamos Labs, he takes George Norrie of a tour of Los Alamos Labs, knows the people that work there. They all say hi to him. He takes them on a tour around the laboratory. Shows them around, shows them the devices they use for biometric security. And
I think the one thing you can't ignore is that there was documentation that he did work at one of these places.
Yes.
And they later claimed he didn't.
Yes.
And like I think I was watching the thing on, maybe it was Netflix. I think like he promoted that, right? It was on Netflix. They show the paper, like we found it.
Yes.
Like he clearly was there.
He was in the employee register.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. No.
But you know, for me, you know, man, I'd love to believe it all.
He's been insanely consistent about that story.
Yeah.
For 40 years.
I want to believe. You know what I mean?
For 30 years, whatever it's been. I want to believe too. That's the problem.
Man, Pixar
the problem
didn't
is
happen.
I want to believe, but that's nonsense. Pixar, it didn't happen is nonsense.
Well,
how do you what about Neanderthals?
No, that's
what dinosaurs. There's not pics.
I'm more so joking, right? What I mean is,
understand.
show me the evidence, right?
I get it.
Let's, you know, the challenge with any theory. I don't like saying conspiracy theory because they're not always conspiracies. Is that people want something to be true. And so they end up looking for things to justify what they think it already is.
Of course.
Instead of starting with what you've got and trying to figure out where it goes from there.
But when you start with what you've got a guy who was living in Vegas, was taking these flights out to Area S4, knows the place, knows it inside out, can describe it very accurately, also worked at Los Alamos Labs, describes that very accurately.
Right.
Yeah,
it proves he worked there.
But
But
it also proves he's a legitimate scientist.
But what
I mean, when you talk to the guy, he's a brilliant guy. He's not a nut.
Right.
But what?
Are you aliens?
That doesn't mean
so.
It doesn't mean aliens, but that's what he was told.
Right.
What he was told is this is something that has come from somewhere else, and they're trying to figure out how to work it, how to use it.
What if we're in a simulation and this was something that was leftover code, or it wasn't supposed to be placed in this certain iteration?
Or there's multiple dimensions that we don't have access to, and that these things do. Let me ask you this, because you're this big coast-to-coast Art Bell fan.
Right.
How much of that UFO stuff do you pay attention to? None. Yeah, me
Zero.
too.
When people contact me on LinkedIn and their major credential is they do a UFO magazine or something like that, I don't add them.
I used to love that stuff. I used to think it was so interesting and intriguing until I started actually paying attention to it.
Yeah.
When I started interviewing some of the people that are involved in the movement, you find the same thing over and over again. This just wanton disregard for reality. This absolute desire to prove something instead of looking at the objective facts, proving that aliens are real, proving that we've been contacted, proving that these eyewitness testimonies are legitimate.
Let me try to cross a weird idea. Okay? Once upon a time in the 1940s, there were two guys, Konrad Lorenz and Nico Tinbergen, who got a Nobel Prize for inventing a field called ethology, which is a certain kind of observation of animal behavior. And Nico Tinbergen would go off to the coastal cliffs around northern Europe. And he would observe these seabirds. And the seabirds would go out, I don't know how many miles, 10, 30, 40 miles out to the ocean to feed and bring back food for their young. And then they would come back at the end of the day, and their nests, they'd have 200 nests next to each other, but the nests had very low walls. So when the seabird came back from her fishing and waddled herself into place, moving her hind back and forth to get in place to incubate her chicks, to warm the eggs, she'd often knock an egg out. And when the egg was knocked out of the nest, the bird would reach her beak out past the egg and then pull her beak back in toward her chest to pull the egg toward the nest, and she'd do it over and over again until she got the egg in the nest. And Nico Tinbergen had this weird idea, I wish I knew where it came from, that this is a reflex, you know, like when your doctor takes a hammer and hammers your knee and your leg shoots out and you had nothing to do with it. He figured this is the same kind of a reflex. And he figured that if you have a reflex, you need a trigger for the reflex, like that patellar hammer that hammered your knee. So he looked to see if there was a trigger that triggered this yanking your beak back in order to scoop the egg back into the nest. And he tried building artificial eggs to see if he could find out what the cues were in the egg that were causing this reaction in the bird. And finally, he got a super egg, which means, I mean, it was bigger than the normal egg, it was browner than the normal egg, and he'd put the real egg. Now, if you're the bird, that real egg has your genetic legacy. It's your genetic future. A lot is riding on that egg, a lot of you. And the phony egg. And the phony egg would attract the bird so strongly that she would ignore her own egg and yank, yank, yank with her beak until she pulled the phony egg into the nest. Oof. And they continued to do research with this kind of thing, and they discovered that they could trick some songbirds into taking a basketball into their nest. And then when the poor little birds tried to get on top of the basketball to incubate it, they would slide off, and they'd be very frustrated, and they would climb back on again and slide off again. It was cruel.
So the phony eggs like fake tits.
Those is called supernormal stimuli. And the idea is that they bring these reflexive reactions.
Yes.
Underlying what Adolf Hitler was doing, underlying what I was doing, dancing on that stage, underlying what you do in front of an audience when you get incandescent and lose yourself and something else talks through you. All that is related to some supernormal pattern in us.
Yes.
So Hitler was basically saying the world is about to end and the kingdom of God is coming. Except the kingdom of God, in his case, was the world will be controlled by the master race, the blonde and blue-eyed Aryans, and all other people will be slave people or will be exterminated. But it was this golden paradise that he was inviting the Germans to, in which they ruled the world because they were born to rule the world.
So, and how did you have the stimulation? Super
stimulus.
So the supernormal stimulus of this artificial egg is like supernormal stimulus of this extreme behavior at the podium that attract people in.
And basically, Hitler was saying, was talking about the equivalent of extraterrestrials. He was talking about this magic quality of the Germans. He was talking about the shared soul of the Germans and how the people in Wagner operas and the gods of the old Germans had been in the souls of these people, and he was evoking the group soul, the Zeitgeist. In this case, it's the Volkgeist, the spirit of a people. And the flying saucer people are after an end of the world in which the world will be remade. And a guy named, well, there was a Jewish kid from a backward town, a really backward town, who only had been trained in manual skills. And he started preaching. And he preached that the world was, as we know, it was about to end, and we were about to enter a new kind of paradise. And because he was Jewish, he figured it's got to happen at Passover. Because at Passover, you put out a cup for Elijah, and Elijah's there to precede the Savior, the guy who will save the Jewish people. So he went up to the holiest city in Judaism, to Jerusalem, and he had a dinner, this Passover dinner, and they put out the cup, and that's when the kingdom of God was supposed to arrive. His prediction of a kingdom of God arriving at that particular Passover ceremony turned out to be utterly wrong. And in fact, the Romans seized him and nailed him to a cross. And he died. It was the opposite of everything he'd predicted. But the religion he'd put together was, and the religion really that Paul put together, because Paul was an international figure. You know, he was comfortable in the global world of the Roman Empire. But what Paul put together around Jesus was a supernormal stimulus. And it evoked a supernormal response, a supernormal reflex. And the flying saucer ideas that, you know, here we are on Earth, but there's this race that's above us that can save us, that's pushing at the same buttons. Hitler was pushing at the same buttons. The world, as we know, was about to end, and there's a new paradise, and the Germans will rule everything. So we are built to receive certain kind of stimuli. God knows how we got built that way. And when I went out in quest of the ecstatic of God, the gods inside of us, at the age of 13, I was looking for those supernormal responses in us, and for the supernormal stimuli that evoked them. And when you're doing art, when you're doing commentary, when you're doing comedy, you are hitting the buttons. You are creating supernormal stimuli. You are testing out jokes until they reach just the right shape. And you know what you can feel in the audience, what that shape is. And then you repeat that shape, knowing what its impact is going to be on the audience. I wrote a new book. It took me a long time to write all of my previous books, including How I Accidentally Started the 60s. And by the way, it isn't the same 1995 manuscript. I had 20 years of additional processing and was able to put a lot more meaning into the book. And hopefully it's still really funny. But I was able to write a book in 6 weeks. The first draft of 178,000 word book. And a normal book is 90,000 words. So this is almost twice the length of a normal book. And I was able to do it because I had told all the stories in the book. And I had felt out how the audiences responded to the stories. And I knew the words to use, and they were a well-worn path in my brain. So I simply put down on paper an oral vocabulary. But it's the audience who shapes you by giving you feedback. And eventually you perfect something so it's like Nico Tinbergen's super egg. I mean, Nico Tinbergen was eventually able to make eggs, super eggs, that had day glow on them, had polka dots on them, that were absurd, but they still had the ability, the way that flying saucer myths have the ability, to evoke the sense that there is a paradise beyond the world that we know.
Don't you think of supernormal stimulus that when you see, like a preacher on the pulpit that's screaming with confidence, when you see any of these things, like even when it comes to fake breasts, like you're seeing something like, you know what you want a woman to be good at bearing children, right? To have the right hip to waist ratio, that she's designed to breastfeed, she has large breasts.
Right.
Even though you know it's fake, it still hits whatever that genetic button is inside of your head.
Yep.
And the alien theme, the idea behind it, the archetype, is kind of like Space Daddy.
Right.
It's like, I know we're stupid, but just like this guy who's screaming on the pulpit has all the answers. Like, thank God someone has all the answers. Well, Space Daddy is for the atheists.
Right.
Space Daddy is for the people, you know what, I've listened to all these people down here. I think they're full of shit, but Space Daddy's going to help us out.
Yeah, well, that's the general idea.
Is that what it is?
Yes. And when you, as I said, when you fashion a joke, you're fashioning it to be a supernormal stimulus.
But Space Dad might be real somewhere because we're dealing with extraordinary numbers.
Okay, science person.
Okay.
I have to tell you that there's only one place in which we've ever discovered any evidence of life, and it's down here on Earth. So I'm a skeptic about life being anywhere.
Right.
Now, changing to a different scientific perspective, there's this thing that I call super simultaneity, super synchrony. And when the universe starts as a rapidly expanding sheet of nothing but space and time. It's space, time, and speed. That's all it is. And when it precipitates in quarks, which is unlikely, how can space, time, and speed become particles, quarks?
Right.
The fact is that there are only something like 16 different forms of those quarks, and there are a gazillion of identical copies of each quark everywhere, and they all sprang into existence at the same time. Fast forward a couple of million years. Galaxies all are pretty much the same, and all of them spring into existence pretty much at the same time, at least the first generation of galaxies. Stars ignite within those galaxies, all following pretty much the same principles. They're all just big gravity balls. Gravity's gravity balls all the way. That's planets, that's moons, all kinds of things. So there is this tendency for the universe to do the same damn thing at pretty much the same damn time, pretty much same damned everywhere in this cosmos. And we do know that there are biomolecules, carbon-based molecules, being formed in interstellar cold gas clouds, interstellar hot gas clouds, all kinds of unlikely places in the cosmos. But those are very simple little molecules. Even though we call them biomolecules, it simply means they've got carbon. Life depends on molecules. In the case of your genome, if we took just one cell, you wouldn't miss it. You have 100 trillion others. So we took just one cell from your body, and we took out the genome, it's actually the genome. So we took out the genome, and we stretched it out because it's all tangled up in the cell. It would be 3 feet long. So there's a big distance between a tiny little molecule of ammonia in an interstellar cloud and that huge, very complex, highly ordered, 3-foot-long molecule, or single molecule, that's your genome. And we haven't learned very much at all about how you go from the simple molecules to that incredibly complex molecules. The origin of life is still one of the big puzzles. But again, because there's super synchrony and super simultaneity all over the cosmos, pretty much the same thing happens at pretty much the same time, the odds are that there are millions of other planets that have life. Those are the odds. But I set all that aside because we don't have evidence of any life, and we've been looking since, okay, I'll tell you a story. It seems to have nothing to do with anything. But once upon a time, a manager gave me an act to work with. It was Earth, Wind, and Fire. And so I read all their lyrics. I read everything about them. I studied them like a Talmudic scholar. I always did. And finally, I got to their album covers. And when I got together with the leader of the band, Maurice White, for lunch, because I hadn't yet learned to set up my boundaries and tell people I'll only work with you if I can see you in your own environment for between 1 and 3 days. That wasn't quite at that point yet. I sat with Maurice and said, Maurice, if I've got you right, you believe that approximately 11,000 years ago, people from another civilization, someplace else in our galaxy or beyond our galaxy, came to this Earth and brought us all of our technologies and left the messages of their technologies in the pyramids. Have I got that right? And Maurice smiled, and he said, yes. So I said, okay, there's this scientist from Cornell University, and he has just had a tremendous success with a science series on PBS. It's the most watched series PBS has ever had. And he's trying to put together an organization to find extraterrestrial intelligence. So if I introduce the two of you, would you be willing to do a benefit concert for him? Because right now he's struggling to get money together. And Maurice said yes. So we tracked down Carl Sagan's summer cottage telephone number, and I put together a conference call between Maurice White and, oh God, what's his name again? Billions and billions and billions of planets. Carl Sagan.
Yeah.
And as soon as Carl got wind of where Maurice was coming from, pseudoscience, the conversation was over, because Carl was already gambling too much on ideas that could get him totally laughed out of science. So it was unfortunate, but that was the early 1980s, probably about 1980.
Didn't he want to sit down with Maurice and sort of explain what we know so far?
No, he
was
couldn't
Maurice's
afford.
stuff? Was Zechariah's Sitchin
It's
stuff?
all kinds of. It's everywhere.
Right.
You can find it all over the place.
But did he have like a source?
Not that I asked him. No,
Just
I was
was
too
like,
busy
he
trying to
just
put this thing together. And it was unfortunate. Yes, it would have been neat if the two of them had been able to sit down and talk.